Dear friends, thank you very much for the possibility to speak to you this evening. The question about genocide, genocidal war, which we face today, is very possible even in 21st century, because the human nature is the same since many years, since many millennia. Well, in order to understand the logic of this war, we have to understand the logic of existence of an empire. Russian Federation as an empire never agreed with the consequences of the Cold War. The Cold War was lost by Russian Federation, and since that time, they never stopped dreaming about revenge, about becoming again an opposite geopolitical pole on our planet. During the Cold War, Russia enjoyed being an opposite pole in geopolitics, and suddenly, due to the very bad economic situation, and first of all, due to the movements in national republics to get their sovereignty, Moscow lost. But already in 1992, Moscow started to occupy different territories in order to restore its being an empire. And already in 1994, according to the claim of Professor Timothy Ash, who participated at one historical conference in St. Petersburg, he listened to, at that time, unknown person, Colonel Putin, who told already in 1994 that for Russia it is important to restore its status of an empire. And if you remember 2003, Russia already threatened Ukraine with maneuvers around the island Tuzla in the Kerch Strait in Azov Sea. And we understood very well that Russia will try to occupy Ukraine as it did with some territories in the former Soviet republics. Back in 2007, during the Munich Security Conference, Putin announced that they will proceed in their endeavor to become again a second pole, second geopolitical pole in our Earth. Well, immediately after that, Georgia and Ukraine started to ask NATO to become a member. And you know that in 2008, the answer of Russia was the escalation. Escalation was resulted in occupation of quite a good piece of Georgian territory. And in 2014, when Ukraine showed that we opted definitely to move toward West, that we opted for the democratic and free society, Russia understood immediately that without occupying Ukraine, no dream about empire will become true. And that is the reason why Russia started the war, because they need Ukraine. I have no time to explain the reasons why Russia needs Ukraine, but these needs are historical, religious, territorial. Well, there are many reasons why Russia needs Ukraine. Even the very same name, Russia, well, let's say very, very delicately, was borrowed. It is not a proper Russian name. Before 1721, when Tsar Peter just changed the name for his country, the true name was the Kingdom of Moscovia. Well, but Russia, it is specific pronunciation of the old name Rus. In many historical cycles, people are used to the term Kievan Rus. And in order to become a second or opposite geopolitical pole, Russia badly needs Ukrainian territories. I stress it, Ukrainian territories without Ukrainian nation. Territories, cities, history, religious heritage, but not Ukrainian nation. And if you followed carefully the beginning of this war, on the third day of this war, a Russian propagandist, Pyotr Akopov, wrote an article for the Russian news agency RIA Novosti, where he told that by this so-called special military operation, Russia wants to resolve once and forever Ukrainian question. It is exactly the same as to resolve once and forever Jewish question. And the second claim was that it is a historical chance for Russia to gain a living space, living territories for Russians. Absolutely the same as Lebensraum. And a few weeks after, another propagandist, Russian propagandist, but the man who is much more serious, who worked on different electoral campaigns in former Soviet republics, in Ukraine too, Timofey Sergeytsev, he wrote an article for the same RIA Novosti, what should we do with Ukrainians? And he made a gradation of Ukrainians. Those who are to be exterminated, those who are to be incarcerated, those who are to be re-educated. But the very nation, Ukrainians, should disappear. That was their claim. And those propagandists wrote nothing for themselves. They just expressed the logic of Kremlin for this war. They were just those who expressed frankly and openly what Putin and other officials think. And it may sound strange for many, but Patriarch Kirill, he, well, blessed all those things. He supports this. He was one of the crucial persons in the elaboration of the so-called ideology of Russian world, Ruski Mir, which says that Russia is nothing but a good kind of Western civilization which goes to fight against the bad kind of Western civilization, which is actually the so-called collective West. And they are coming with this war as a messiah in order to liberate the Western civilization from what went wrong. And they took the position of being better in metaphysical, ethical, and religious sense. And if you are this kind of messiah and you see someone who is an evil, and they treat Ukrainians as evil, to be denazified, to be demilitarized, etc., etc., well, they will do their best to annihilate this evil nation. They claim Ukrainians as this evil nation. And my probably final claim is that if someone thinks that you can appease Putin by talking about some territorial compromise, to concede, let's say, Crimea or some other territories, the logic would be the same as in 1938, when many politicians thought that if they will concede some territories of Czechoslovakia, they will appease Hitler and stop the Second World War. They appeared to be wrong. In this case, those who think that you can appease Putin, those are also wrong, because the aim of the goal of Putin is very clear. You should remember that when you in the Western country and Ukraine, when we say at the beginning of May, never again, meaning that never again atrocities of the Second World War, Russians has another claim. We can repeat it. And they write it on their cars. They paint tanks on their cars, and they write down on Berlin or toward Berlin. And they mean that they will never stop. They will not stop in Kyiv. They will not stop in Warsaw. They will not stop even in Berlin, because they would like to make reality the famous saying of Nikita Khrushchev, that Soviet army, or let's say Moscow army, will throw down NATO armies into the Atlantic Ocean. Well, if we do not stop Russians, we will witness again a full-scale genocide of Ukrainians. Ukrainians already suffered from the severe genocide organized by Moscow in 1932-1933 due to the artificial famine organized by Stalin. You probably know the name Holodomor. And during this war, if we do not stop Russians, and if we do not throw them away from Ukrainian territories, we will see a lot of different atrocities. We will agree with the idea any dictator may have that the rule of force is the main principle of this life. Therefore, I ask everyone who can influence the governments just to help more Ukraine with weapon supply, with any other help that can put this war to the end with Ukrainian victory.